Hello friends, welcome to Ragsmed. Today we will be studying the last topic of cell injury, that is mechanism of cell injury. So today we will discuss the three mechanisms of cell injury, that is ATP depletion, mitochondrial damage and loss of calcium homeostasis as part 1. And in part 2 we will discuss the rest mechanism, that is defects in membrane permeability and free radical injury. So let's start today's session. Now, what is ATP depletion and why a cell requires ATP? To understand this, first let's see a diagram. So this is a normal cell. This is the nucleus of a cell and these are the DNA of a cell. Now let's suppose that this is the blood supply of the cell. Now imagine a situation if there is ischemia. If there is ischemia, that is obstruction in the blood vessel, due to which less blood is coming in the cell, so ischemia is the cause of injury, that is, it is the etiology of the injury. So now, why a cell requires blood? For getting oxygen, a cell requires blood. So less blood in the cell means less oxygen. That is, the cell is in hypoxia condition. Now, why oxygen is required? Oxygen is required for the formation or synthesis of ATP. This oxygen goes inside the mitochondria. So this is the mitochondria, let's suppose, of a cell with its double layered structure. So now the oxygen goes in the mitochondria of a cell, and inside mitochondria oxidative phosphorylation takes place and ATP is synthesized in the mitochondria. Since we know that mitochondria is the powerhouse of a cell, so it synthesizes ATP. Since less oxygen is going in the mitochondria, so less or no ATP is synthesized. So it is known as ATP depletion. So this was the stress to a cell. Now why it is a stress to a cell and why ATP depletion is there? It is because of that mitochondria is not forming ATP. And why mitochondria is not forming ATP? Because ATP is formed from oxygen, so oxygen is absent or less. So why oxygen is less? Because it is present in blood. And why oxygen is less in blood? It is due to ischemia, which is leading to less blood in the cell. And less blood means less oxygen in the cell. That means less or no ATP in the cell, causing ATP depletion. So this was all about ATP depletion. Now, because of absence of ATP, What are the problems faced by the cell? So, there are three problems because of ATP depletion in a cell. What are the three types of problems? We'll go through it one by one. Now, there are three stories I'm going to tell you one by one what is going to happen in a cell. So, let's suppose this is a cell. This is the nucleus with DNA present in it. And let's suppose this is the mitochondria of a cell. Double layered mitochondria. Now, on the surface of a cell, there is sodium potassium pump. There is sodium potassium pump. So, normally this pump operates in presence of ATP. If ATP is not present, then sodium potassium pump will not operate. So, when ATP is present in a cell, this pump will take 3 sodium out of a cell and 2 potassium in. Now, if ATP is absent due to ischemia, or hypoxia, if ATP is absent in a cell, then sodium potassium pump will not operate. It won't operate. Due to which sodium will not go out and potassium will not come in of a cell. Now, sodium is osmotic carrier of water. Wherever sodium goes, water or H2O also goes along with it. So, since sodium is not going out, so water is also not going out, causing accumulation in a cell. Causing accumulation in the cell, resulting in cell swelling. And after a point a cell will burst and it will die. It is causing cell injury due to the swelling of a cell. Along with swelling of a cell, there is a formation of blebs. So these are the blebs. So the formation of blebs will take place on the surface of a cell. So these were the two things happens during the non-functioning of sodium potassium pump. What are the two things? It is cell swelling and blebs formation. So this was the first story. Now let's go to second story. Now, second way, if ATP is absent due to ischemia or hypoxia, then cell tries to make ATP from some other source. Normally, ATP is formed in the mitochondria, from oxygen known as oxidative phosphorylation. So now the cell tries to form ATP through some other mechanism that is known as anaerobic glycolysis. What is anaerobic glycolysis? It is the another process or mechanism which takes place in the absence of oxygen. As we have already studied in the biochemistry that in aerobic glycolysis from one molecule of oxygen 36 molecules of ATPs are formed. But in anaerobic glycolysis from one molecule of oxygen, only 2 ATPs are formed, along with the end product of lactic acid. Along with the end product of lactic acid. So this lactic acid will cause acidic pH of a cell. Since this is an acid, so it will reduce the pH of a cell. And due to reduced pH of a acid, it will go in the nucleus of a cell and cause clumping of a nucleus. So now imagine a cell which is swelled up with formation of blips and the nucleus is clumped. So what is the reason for swelling and blips formation? It was sodium-potassium pump non-functioning or not operating. And what is the reason of clumping of a nucleus? It is due to lactic acid formation, which is leading to acidic pH of a cell. That is, it will reduce the pH of a cell, and finally the acid will go into the nucleus, which will cause the clumping of a cell. Now, the third and last story is that inside a cell there is endoplasmic reticulum, which is of two types, that is rough and smooth. Now what is the difference between rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum? Rough endoplasmic reticulum are those on which ribosomes are attached on their surface, and smooth endoplasmic reticulum are those in which the ribosomes are not attached, like this. This is the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. And for binding of ribosome with the endoplasmic reticulum, ATP is required. And inside ribosome, protein synthesis takes place in 30S and 50S. So if ATP is absent, ribosome will detach from the endoplasmic reticulum, so no protein formation, takes place. So the cell will be deployed of protein. All enzymes, cell structures, cell membrane are made up of proteins, so everything will be depleted, so the cell will ultimately die. So this was all about the third story. So here we completed about the ATP depletion. Now let's see its flow chart one by one. Now let's see the flow chart of ATP depletion. So the number one story we have already discussed is that due to ischemia there is less blood in the cell, and due to less blood there will be less oxygen. Less oxygen is due to hypoxia. So In the mitochondria, there will be reduced oxidative phosphorylation. Due to reduced oxidative phosphorylation, there will be decrease in the formation of ATP, and ultimately it will reduce the sodium-potassium pump action in the surface of a cell membrane, due to which the sodium and water will enter into the cell and potassium will exit, making endoplasmic reticulum dilating and also cellular swelling with the formation of blebs. So this was all about first story. Now let's see the second story of ATP depletion. So now since the sodium potassium pump is not working and there is no formation of ATP, so now the cell will find another way and it will form ATP from another mechanism known as anaerobic glycolysis. So it occurs, and due to which there is loss of glycogen and there is formation of or accumulation of lactic acid in the cytoplasm, which will cause the acidic pH of a cell, and it will finally reduce the pH of a cell, and then the acid will enter into the nucleus and interferes with enzymes and finally leads to clumping of nuclear chromatin. So this was all about second story. Now third story was about endoplasmic reticulum. So due to decreased ATP, the ribosomes will be detached from the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Ultimately, the rough endoplasmic reticulum will lose the ribosomes, and due to decrease in the ribosomes, there will be decrease in the formation of proteins, that is, protein synthesis falls, due to which the structural proteins, that is membranes and cytoskeleton and enzymes, will deplete and finally the cell will die. So this is all about the three stories related to ATP depletion. Now let's come back to the second mechanism of cell injury, that is mitochondrial damage. So in mitochondrial damage, mitochondria are critical players in cell injury. They supply life-sustaining energy by producing ATP, that is powerhouse of a cell. So in mitochondrial damage, there is formation of a high conductance channel in the mitochondrial membrane called the mitochondrial permeability transition pore, in which there is loss of mitochondrial membrane resulting in failure of normal oxidative phosphorylation, leading to depletion of ATP. So what did you get from here? Is that here the injurious agent can be anything which will lead to the mitochondrial damage. Normally, oxidative phosphorylation takes place inside mitochondria, due to which ATP is formed. But now, imagine a mitochondria is damaged caused by any agent, then three things happens in a cell. Normal oxidative phosphorylation will not take place, so no ATP formation will take place, that is ATP depletion occurs. In normal oxidative phosphorylation, generally O2 enters into the mitochondria and gets converted into ATP. So the second thing which gonna happen in mitochondria is that abnormal oxidative phosphorylation takes place because of damaged mitochondria. In abnormal oxidative phosphorylation, which takes place in damaged mitochondria, O2 gets converted into free radicals, and those free radicals will ultimately cause damage to the cell. Here we can see the mitochondrial damage. Abnormal oxidative phosphorylation takes place, due to which there is formation of reactive oxygen species, that is ROS. which is also known as free radicals, and it will finally damage the cell. That is, it has deleterious effects. So this was the second point. So there are generally three types of free radicals. Number one is superoxide ion, number two is hydroxyl ion, and number three is hydrogen peroxide. Basically, these three free radicals are formed in the cytoplasm of a cell, and they will cause complete cell damage and ultimately results in irreversible cell injury. Now the third thing in the mitochondrial damage is that between the two layers of mitochondria, there is a protein known as cytochrome C. And when the mitochondria is damaged, this cytochrome C will come out in the cytoplasm and ultimately cause the apoptosis of a cell. So, this is the reversible cell injury of a cell, as we have already discussed this in apoptosis. So, here we can see the mitochondria sequester cytochrome C between their outer and inner membranes. And when there is mitochondrial damage, it will lead to increased permeability of the outer mitochondrial membrane, due to which there is leakage of cytochrome C in the cytoplasm or cytosol, causing apoptosis of a cell. So this was the three mechanisms of mitochondrial damage. Now let's see its summary. So what we have studied in mitochondrial damage is that first, it will lead to the failure of ATP generation. How the ATP generation failure occurs? Because due to the decrease in oxygen, the oxidative phosphorylation cannot take place, due to which there is the decrease or absent of formation of ATP, causing failure of ATP generation. Second thing is that formation of free radical, that is ROS. Since the cell cannot form ATP from normal oxidative phosphorylation, so abnormal oxidative phosphorylation takes place because of damaged mitochondria, and O2 gets converted into free radicals, and those free radicals will cause damage to a cell. Third point is that release of cytochrome C from the two layers of mitochondria. It will come into the cytoplasm, causing the activation of caspase enzyme, and eventually it will cause the apoptosis of a cell. So, due to the opening of mitochondrial permeability transition pore, these three following damage happens in the mitochondria. The third mechanism of cell injury is loss of calcium homeostasis. So generally 99% of calcium is present extracellularly, and rarely 1% of calcium is present intracellular. So if anything is causing injury to a cell, then two things will happen. The extracellular calcium will come into the cytoplasm, and the intracellular concentration of calcium will also leak calcium into the cytoplasm. So in the cytoplasm, there is transient increase in the concentration of calcium. Now, due to increase in the calcium in the cytoplasm, what will happen? So there are 4 enzymes present in the cytoplasm. So the calcium is activator of those enzymes, and when this calcium comes in the cytoplasm, these 4 enzymes gets activated. So let's see its third point of mechanism cell injury, that is loss of calcium homeostasis. So the intracellular free calcium is very low compared with extracellular level. So the most intracellular calcium is sequestered in mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum. Injury causes an increase in cytosolic calcium because of increased influx across the plasma membrane and release of calcium from intracellular stores, that is mitochondria and endoplasmic reticulum. So there will be increased cytosolic calcium which activate a number of enzymes. So what are those enzymes? Number one is phospholipase. This will damage the membrane, that is cell membrane. Number two is protease, which break down both membrane and cytoskeletal proteins. Third, internuclease. It will cause DNA fragmentation. And fourth one is ATPase, which will cause hastening ATP depletion. So this was all about third mechanism, that is loss of calcium homeostasis. Let's summarize the things which we have studied in today's class. So the number one mechanism of cell injury is ATP depletion, and there are three mechanisms from which ATP is depleted. So the number one mechanism is that due to ischemia or hypoxia, there will be less blood in the cell, due to which there will be less oxygen, and due to less oxygen there will be less ATP. So there will be non-functioning of a sodium-potassium pump, due to which sodium, which is supposed to go out, it will stay inside the cell, and the potassium, which is supposed to go in, it won't go in and it will remain outside. And also the water will stay along with sodium inside the cell, and due to the accumulation of sodium and water, it will cause the cell swelling along with blebs formation. Second point is that detachment of ribosome from rough endoplasmic reticulum. Due to the detachment of ribosome, there will be no protein synthesis, and hence there will be no formation of ATP. The third mechanism in ATP depletion is anaerobic glycolysis. Due to absence of oxidative phosphorylation, a cell will try to make ATP from another mechanism, that is anaerobic glycolysis, in which two ATPs are formed with lactic acid as end product in the cytoplasm. And this lactic acid will finally reduce the pH of a cell, since it is acid, and the pH of a cell will be reduced, ultimately causing clumping of a nucleus. So this was all about ATP depletion. Now let's see the second mechanism, that is mitochondrial damage, in which there are also three mechanisms. Number one is that there will be non-functioning of normal oxidative phosphorylation, due to which there will be no formation of ATP. Second is abnormal oxidative phosphorylation will take place, due to which the oxygen will get converted into the free radicals, that is ROS, that is reactive oxygen species, and it will finally degrade the cell. Third point is that cytochrome C leakage from the two layers of mitochondria. The cytochrome C will come out into the cytoplasm, and it will finally activate certain enzymes which will cause apoptosis of a cell. Now the third mechanism is loss of calcium homeostasis. As we know that 99% of calcium is present extracellular, that is outside of a cell, and rarely 1% of calcium remains intracellular. And when there is injury to a cell, then abundant calcium accumulates in cytoplasm, which will ultimately activate four enzymes, that is internuclease, phospholipase, protease, and ATPase. And finally, these enzymes will degrade. Internuclease will degrade DNA, phospholipase will degrade phospholipid, that is cell membrane, protease will degrade proteins, and ATPase will degrade ATP, and this will finally lead to cell injury. So this was all about the 3 mechanisms of cell injury. Tomorrow we will study the remaining 2 topics, that is 2 mechanisms of cell injury. So this was all about today's class. Hope you like it. Please like, share and subscribe for more videos of pathology. Thank you.